Hey everyone, welcome to Philip in the Cloud. Today we're going to be talking about Ibis again, and we're going to be talking about some new functionality that's coming in Ibis 5 for making it easy to pivot your data, making the ever annoying task of cleaning up your data much easier and faster. So let's jump right in. As usual, we're gonna fire up IPython. We're going to import star from Ibis Interactive, and what that does is going to create a couple of, it's going to bring in a couple of often used modules that are good, that are useful for interactive analysis, and you can see what those are with whos. So we've brought in an alias for the examples module called ex, the Ibis module itself, and then we have s as an alias for the selectors module, and we'll use each of those today in the examples. And the thing we're going to be talking about is a new API function on table expressions called pivot longer. It's taken from the R community, from the tidyr package, which is generally a package that kind of helps you get your data into a tidy shape, where each column is a variable, and then there's one or more measurements columns. And so we were heavily inspired by that API to add something kind of very similar. And now that we have selectors implemented, we can actually do that. So let's look at an example that comes straight out of the tidyr docs, which is this Pew survey data, which we can look at and see kind of what the description that comes with the R package is. It's Pew Religion and Income Survey, and let's pull that into a table. We'll call that relig income, and then we'll say ibis dot, we'll say x dot relig income. Let's get the raw data set so we don't get the unadulterated column names. We load that data in, and since we've set interactive to true already with our star import above, we get the interactive repr. And we can see that the first column is the respondent's religion, and then there's a bunch of columns indicating their income bracket. And for this data to be tidy, the income should not be an individual. Each income bracket should not be an individual column. It should be a single column with kind of the matching data in the right place. And pivot longer is the API to sort of get you to that place. And the way you call this is you say the table you're interested in this case, relig income. You say dot pivot longer. You give it a selector. You can see it's kind of tab completing for me. Let me make myself a little bit smaller so that it's easier to see the examples going on here. Okay, cool. Reduced Philip size. Right. The first argument to pivot longer is a selector that says what columns you would like to kind of convert into values. And so in this case, I'm going to give it a selector that's not the religion column. I want to keep that one as is. And then all those columns are going to now, all those column names are going to now become a single value. And I want to call that column income. And that's where the names to argument comes in. And then finally, all the numbers in here, which are in, looks like it's a count of respondents in a particular, for a particular religion and particular income bracket. So we're going to call that values to count. And so that kind of happened right away. Right now we're using the DuckDB backend. This is implemented for any backend that supports arrays and unnest. That's currently the sort of generic implementation, and we're going to work on getting bringing this operation to backends that don't support unnest or arrays using unions. And so look out for that in probably a feature follow-up release to 5.0, which is coming out soon. But this feature working for DuckDB and Trino and Snowflake and ClickHouse and a couple of others will work out of the box. Cool. So let's look at some more features of Pivot Longer, and we'll see some more advanced usage. And we're just kind of build this up a little bit. So let's look at the World Bank population data, which is another example that ships with Ibis. And you'll see that there's like World Bank Pop and World Bank Pop Raw, and the _raw suffix indicates that we haven't done any pre-processing of the columns to kind of make it nicer to work with in Ibis. And that's kind of the point here. We want to take these columns that may be just data themselves and like turn them into proper variables. So we'll call fetch, and in this case we actually need to pass an argument, header equals 1, which says, hey, actually the first row is a header. Otherwise, DuckDB and probably most other systems will interpret that first row as data, and you'll see why here in a second. So we'll pull that in, look at the table, and you can see there's a country, an indicator. Not entirely. I think the indicator is the is the metric that's being measured here, or the metrics being reported here. So there's like total population, and then there's population growth, and then each subsequent column is a year containing those numbers. And so we actually want to turn that those numbers all into like a single column that's just 2000, 2001, etc. And then we can sort of plot and do whatever we want after that. But let's sort of get our data into a tidy form. And there's a number of ways we can kind of select out the columns we want to pivot on, but luckily we have selectors, right? We don't have to do like a list comprehension or like some more complex piece of code. We can just say pivot longer, and then we can say s.matches. There's a number of ways you could do this. So this is one way. You can say anything that's got any column name that's got a string that matches this regex. And again, like we said, we want to call this year, and we don't really. I suppose we could call the values to something else, but let's leave the default, which is going to call it just value. Okay, cool. So we got our data into our the longer form. We've got a year column like we wanted, but it's a string, and you can potentially, you may want to convert that to an int if possible. Another way you can express this is you can actually use the .r object, which is a sort of a thing that generates a slice. And in this case, you can slice. You can say, give me all the whatever the column is that it's 2000, and give me all the columns between that and 2017, whatever they're called. And that sort of gives you the same output. These are just different ways of using selectors as part of a pivot call. The next thing that we may want to do is to try and convert this year value into a number first. So the way you can do that is you can say names transform, and this can take a number of things, but it's going to operate on the column name, so it receives a Python string in this case, and I'm just calling int on that, and it kind of thankfully sort of nicely kind of casts that to an int for us, and all that processing happens in Python, and then that's just kind of sent to the database, and that's usually very cheap because it's a column name. I suppose if you have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of columns, it can get potentially pretty expensive, but we haven't sort of hit those limits yet. So let's move on to some even more kind of advanced usage, and we're going to look at Billboard, kind of the Hot 100 data set that ships with tidyr that we've brought into Ibis examples. So again, the raw data set is the regular data set is fine. We don't need to. The columns are not super complicated there. Okay, so in this case we have an artist, a musical artist, a track, the date a particular track was entered into the top 100, and then each week it remained and its rank that week on the top 100. Um, and if there's definitely more than 5 weeks here, right? If we look at columns, like we've got 76 weeks, right? So that's like a lot of weeks, and we want to turn that all kind of into a column. But we don't the sort of the week information is not particularly sorry, the WK prefix on these columns is not particularly useful because we can just call the column that we pivot to week. So we're going to need to figure out a way to actually strip that out. Again, pivot longer, and we're going to see starts with WK. We're going to call our resulting column week. And then there's this thing I haven't talked about yet called names pattern, which allows you to kind of pluck out values from a column string to be used as values in the new column. And basically the match groups in the regular expression are the things that we plucked out. So in this case, we want to basically match kind of everything after WK. And you'll see there's a match group here, and what's going to happen is that this will extract, the number from the column name. We want to transform that into an int. Oops, int. And we want to call our resulting values column. We're going to call that rank. Let's just start with that. Let's just call this BB for short. Oh, great. Looks like there's a bug. Let's take out the names transform for now. And it looks like there's another bug. Let's poke around and see what's happening. Names to, values to. Let's look at the data again. Probably broke something trying to muck around with this. Oh, okay. It looks like some of our data some of our columns that we're trying to pivot on, like we can't just like kind of concatenate, strings to ints, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense without some further processing. So luckily there's a function for that, or an argument for that called values transform. And this is going to be operating kind of in Ibis space. It's going to actually apply a function, or call it deferred, onto the resulting values. So in this case, we have underscore from our star import above. I'm going to cast that to an int. And then let's keep values 2 in there as well. Oh, that's already there. And let's see if that works. Okay, we didn't get an error. Cool. So now we've actually sort of done some additional cleaning on those values that allowed us to compute our pivot, right? And maybe the last thing we want to do is bring in names transform again and call that an int here. Okay, now we've gotten our weeks. And you'll notice that you see a bunch of nulls here, or not a bunch, or at least there's 3 here that we can see, and probably some more. And the thing that it's like not every song stays on the top 100 songs for all the weeks that exist, right? So you may actually just want to say, we've got our pivot here, and then you may just want to say like, drop NA, rank. I think you can do that without the brackets. Cool. So now we've only got the weeks that a song was on the track. So now we could potentially we could ask the question like, what song was the longest running? And so we should be able to use let's see, track, bb.track, argmax, and then I believe we should be able to say bb.week. Let's see if that works. Okay, that's pretty interesting. Um, there's a song called Higher. It's probably the Creed song. And we could say track, hopefully this works. Cool. So we've got the track, and we want to know where, that track, which, we want to look at all the data for that track. And if we want to see sort of like what that, how many weeks it was on there, we can say week, max, and we can see that it was on there for 65 weeks, which is quite a long time for a song to be on the top 100. So that's a pretty good example, I think, of how Pivot kind of unlocks some interesting data analysis. Now I'm going to go through a few more examples, and we're going to get into some fancier use of Pivot. So let's pull another example, WHO data. Let's first look at it. World Health Organization TB data. I'm going to guess that probably means tuberculosis. And let's see. Let's pull that data down. Let's call it WHO. And we're going to fetch it. Let's see what that looks like. So there's a ton of columns here. They're kind of going off the page here. There's about 60 columns here, so let's rep it again. And we've got country and a couple of other variables going on here. The year, it looks like this was recorded. And we kind of want to take, these column names and turn them into a variable, but it kind of looks like each of these things in like separated by the underscore like a separate variable. And so let's just see if we can kind of pluck out those things and put them into a separate column. It's kind of giving me away here. So we're going to pull out all those columns, and we know that it starts with M014, and it goes to new rel F65. We're gonna say names to, and we want to say we want to pull out the diagnosis, which is the first bit in front of the first underscore, the patient's gender, and their age. And so perhaps you've sort of seen what's going to happen, but we're going to use name pattern to pluck out kind of what's going on here. So we're going to ignore this new because that seems to be in the beginning of a bunch of all the columns, perhaps all the columns. I haven't looked at them explicitly. We're then going to pull out the first bit up to the first underscore. We're going to pull out the single character, and then we're going to pull out the rest of that number there. And then we're going to call, we're going to say values to, and we're going to call that a count. Let's just call this P for now. So that returned immediately, which is pretty nice. And then we've got our pivoted data. And so you can kind of do kind of whatever you want with this afterward. But that was sort of showing kind of more advanced use of, or like how you can kind of bring together names to and names pattern to do some really powerful sort of extraction of column names. The final thing I'm going to show on the stream is that you can actually do transformations kind of on a per column basis. Let's say you wanted to recode some of these variables into numbers. you could pass to names transform a dictionary. There's other things you can pass, but take a look at the docs at ibis-project.org for more information there. Let's say we wanted to recode gender M1 and F to 2, and then we wanted to, let's just say we wanted to do that. What this is going to do is it's going to say, okay, wherever I get this M or this F value, look it up in this dictionary. If I don't find it, return a null value, and then that gets put into the gender column instead of M and F. Okay, cool. There we go. We've got gender, and we've now recoded it to something else. So that is all for today. Hopefully you enjoyed the stream. Get in touch. Get in touch with the Ibis issue tracker. We're on GitHub at github.com/ibis-project/ibis. Please open issues. Please try out the library. We love feedback. We like to fix bugs. And I will see everyone next time.